Hey everybody, welcome to another video, and today we are going to be reacting to a very catchy little looking title on YouTube. The Loss Finally Caught Up. Every AAA is in trouble. A video done by, I really hope I pronounced this accurately, Bellora News. Kind of interested. The title sounds fantastic. And I'm not sure if this is good or bad, but we're gonna hear him out. We're gonna see what it's all about, and we are gonna enjoy it. So let's don't forget to like and subscribe, and most importantly, if you truly enjoy this, why don't you put some support with that? In the meantime, let's enjoy the video, guys. Okay, well, finally caught up. Every AAA is in trouble.
Welcome back, everyone. Today's video is a true bombshell for the games industry. This is one of those things that can have true impact, so let me explain. What just happened is the European Union just rewrote the rules on premium currency in games. Of course, that's the home of Ubisoft, of CD Projekt, of DICE, of Remedy, and so many other companies. And make no mistake, the new rules that they have just laid out could change gaming utterly. Actually change the games that you play. So you know those bundles where you've got to buy more currency than the item that you want costs, or perhaps the idea of limited time events, of no refunds and digital purchases. These are all being fought against by legislators. And when the EU takes action, it's a large enough block that it can reverberate around the world. And as evidence, how's that USB-C charger on our phone working out? There's a lot to talk about. Strap in. This one could actually, honestly, be pretty fucking good.
All right, sweet. Off the bat, yeah. I see what you mean. Early on, you already got me like a little bit caught up. What are we talking about here? Are we talking about AAA gaming? I think he's just talking about gaming as a whole and not specifically to AAA games. But I like where he's going with it, and I appreciate the fact that they are doing something specifically in the rights of like Customer Protections Acts and I have to say it myself, children. I mean, these gaming companies are hunting for kids' money, parents, that are just getting spent on games. And I mean, it goes both ways. Parents are supposed to tell kids, no, it's wrong. But then again, we know for a fact that these kids are still going to do naughty things. This is what it is.
Oddly enough, you've got EU legislation to thank for the standardized phone charger situation and for many, the ability to play ROMs on their iPhone. But now we seem to have EU legislation to thank for premium currency being threatened. So here's what went on. In September 2024, the EU proposed the Digital Fairness Act that was targeting all the practices online that make using digital services miserable. And in particular, it called out dark patterns in video games as one of the targets. And that's basically the gross manipulative
Dark patterns in online interfaces. Okay.
techniques that
I
try
get
to
it.
strong arm money out of
Call of
people,
Duty.
obviously, especially applying to people who are not yet adults. And this is
Yeah.
fairly weighty because in the EU alone, games are obviously big business. Revenues have been going up in the EU. Online game spending in 2018 represented.
I know he's representing one market, but even here in South Africa, games are a big market. It's the thing about gaming is and I'm gonna say this out loud. It's easy to spend money on gaming, and it's not that easy to spend money on, let's say, a hobby like racing a car or playing golf or being okay, maybe not being a tennis player because there's a lot of free tracks you can go to, but the tennis rackets and playing and enjoying something to the same type of level of just being a gamer, it doesn't match. If you in console, you're gonna spend like South Africans about $12,000 rand. Sorry, my bad. 12,000 rand, and you're gonna have a console, and you're gonna be playing the games. You need to buy them online. They're about $1,000 a game. About I'm not into console gaming anymore, so I don't really know. PC gaming could be more expensive, could be less. depending on what you really want to get into. For me, for instance, it's not that actually expensive just to play games because there's free to play games like CS, Valorant, and more. Yes, they have this issue in particular, but I mean, games are easy to get people to spend money on because it never feels like you're spending too much because you're always spending a tiny bit at a time. And a lot of people don't notice every penny counts. That saying is going to reach to you at some point because you're going to do this, and where's all my money going? And that's just like life.
74% of turnover coming from online revenue and 83% by
Oh.
2022. That's all of those fun, dark patterns actually working and getting digital currency money out of people. But
Hmm.
those dark patterns target the most vulnerable people the most. And there's no one more vulnerable in the eyes of the law than children. Children
Yeah.
who spend an average of €31 a month on online games, according to
Hmm.
data from Video Games Europe. Well, that's actually went down from 2023. I guess that's good. Everyone's feeling a
Yeah.
little bit of the economic pinch, but it's
Fair
not
enough.
stopped the EU from taking action to protect kids, basically, from predatory premium currency models. And in situations like this, there's often a great offender, right, that is held up as an example of something doing everything wrong. So you might wonder, is it an Activision game? Is it Ultimate Team from the EA football games? Maybe it was Roblox. No. No, today
No.
it's a game about horses. It's called Star Stable. You've probably never heard of it. And if this
No.
all does turn out good, we'll have the horse girls to thank.
What? What horse game are we talking about?
This is Star
Star
Stable Online. It
Stable.
comes from a
Okay.
Swedish developer called Star Stable Entertainment, and it is the game that may have just rewritten rules and monetization in the EU. So, yeah, thanks, Horse Girls. Now, it turns out that Star
Hmm.
Stable just uses all of the premium currency tactics in the book, which makes it a pretty awesome example, right? Especially because it is targeted at a younger audience. So, in March
Yeah.
24, the Swedish Consumer Agency filed a complaint with the EU-wide Consumer Protection Cooperation Network. That's a mouthful. And
Yeah.
that complaint alleged that Star Stable Entertainment were targeting children and using harmful commercial practices that breached EU consumer regulations. Now, the findings corroborated much of those allegations. They found that the game made direct appeals to children in their ads, that they were using pressuring techniques like FOMO,
Hmm.
which is particularly despicable when it's not,
Yeah.
on adults, and there was a lack
Exactly.
of
Exactly.
transparency on purchases and loads more things. I mean, here's an example of one that's particularly rough. They were responsible for influencers promoting the game to kids without any disclosure of the spending risk. So, in short, it's bloody well damning. Star Stable Entertainment now have a
Hmm. That gets in me, specifically with the statement. I agree. Influencers basically promoted the game to children, but they weren't honest about the spending possibility, which is very common. And influencers just won't take responsibility for it because it's like telling somebody whose job it is to put makeup on a person that's deceased to do a better job, and you don't know because that person every day has to put makeup on the deceased. They're doing the best they can to represent, and you don't always know how that person looked after whatever situation happened. Yes, it's important. Yes, it needs to be done, but influencers, it's a very difficult thing. For instance, if I get a contract and somebody tells me, "Hey, listen, promote my game," most of the time I'm not interested, and I've been honest about this a few times. I've said no to sponsorship opportunities specifically because I don't have an interest in what they're trying to represent. I do have a sponsor now. I've looked at it. It's a CS trading site. Influential wise, what I'm telling you is you have skins and you want more skins, you can go and you can buy more skins. That's what I'm telling you. I'm not saying to you that it has a risk because there's technically no risk. I chose the sponsorship because of what I felt is true. And yes, I have been approached by gambling websites, and they was like, "You play Counter Strike? Do you want it?" No, I don't. I don't do gambling websites. One, I'm a Christian. I don't believe in that. Two, I also don't agree with the whole gambling concept because it's targeted, sorry, at children. That's what it is. I don't want an argument on that.
Month to address complaints and propose solutions with their game, but what matters for our purposes today is the Consumer Protection Cooperation Network, we can just call the CPCN. They have laid out what they want. So I'll spell it out via an example. This is what should happen in the ideal world. You, dear gamer, want to buy yourself a new horse. You see that your new horse costs 300 star coins. The store tells you that's around £5, so it just lets you buy 300 coins exactly. You buy exactly what you need for the horse, rather than the current bundles that exist of 200 coins or 400 coins, meaning that you always have to buy with some wastage, which just ends up giving the company more money. So in short, no obfuscation bullshit, no weird tactics. And worst of all for these companies, this will have them bloody well shaking. You'd have to have a refund policy, both for the coins and the horse. And none of this would be pitched as a limited time event where you have got to get the thing right now. So that's an example then of how these policies should be applied, and each is indeed a massive win for consumers. But that would not matter if this amounted to nothing. You could look at all this and think, right, so some Swedish horse game has got a slap on the wrist. No, it's more than that. This seems to have a backbone. So here's the big important bit.
Okay.
These solutions are the backbone of what the European Consumer Organization calls key principles for trustworthy gaming environments. And these could cause huge problems for anyone who is using premium currency. When I say this could shake the foundations of the game industry economy, I absolutely mean it. So these, which I'm going to spell out for you, are the minimum requirements for purchasing and using virtual currencies in the EU. And what's neat is the philosophy behind them. So the CP.
So the thing is, this is for the EU, but it's going to start there and expand. So, but I agree, but I'm starting to lose track of if this is going to really help, because I'm concerned about the concept of again, you said slap on the wrist, slap on the wrist. This feels more like that.
PCN considers these
Personally,
premium currencies as an equivalent to the real money that is used to purchase them, and that for them means that they are just as worthy of legal scrutiny. So you can see how that is in a way a mindset shift that paves the way for actually treating these as they are. So just think about the last game that you played that had a premium currency in it. Whatever that game is, I want you to keep it in mind. And with that in your mind, I'm now going to go through the various different practices that this targets. So, prices for premium currency packs that are a little more than the available product. So you've got to buy extra coins, extra gems, whatever it may be. Obfuscation of how much currency is worth by always pairing currency with other items or multiple currency options. As an example, I think World of Warcraft may actually fall for that because it includes Trader's Tender in one of the new mount bundles. Another one, a complete lack of a refund option for making currency purchases or even for in-game items. So there would have to be a refund policy. That's something none of us are used to in these games. Also, FOMO practices to encourage buying. Those are going to be looked at, so some of those may no longer be allowed. And all of these practices are now something that the EU can hold against developers and publishers, even more so if the parental controls of said game are not up to scratch. So it's less a case of me saying, can you think of any game that falls into those categories? And it's more me saying, can you think of a game that doesn't fall into those criteria? It's fairly humongous, which might indeed be the point here. We know this is something the EU have been thinking about in other circumstances.
It's got me convinced. I actually agree. Good point.
Than just Star Stable. As an example, in September 2024, the European Consumer Organization published a report on popular online games. And in that report, they targeted Diablo 4, EA Sports FC 24, Minecraft, Fortnite, and a bunch of others. And it was all about how the virtual currencies work. they were not thrilled on what they found in those games, right? Because many of them, well, they did the same things that, Star
Yeah,
Citizen
yeah, yeah,
did
yeah.
that we do not like. And that
A
straight
lot
up
of
means we
them.
can say that Electronic Arts and Blizzard Entertainment are being directly targeted by this body. That really is something.
Absolutely.
So it's no wonder that the BEUC will be holding workshops to help European companies implement these new principles. Because it seems they may actually have to implement them.
Absolutely.
Everything that they previously thought was acceptable pretty much now isn't. And that, here's the shocking thing, that's not my commentary. That is what the industry response has been. So we know they are shaking in their boots.
Nice.
It ain't surprising the industry bodies aren't thrilled about this, and a big shout out to one of our Belgrade Games members, Neo Nebulosa, for directing us to this stuff. So, the European Game Developers Federation and the Video Games Europe, or two groups basically, they've published a joint statement that expresses their disappointment with the findings. Let's read their statement. Quote, "We are disappointed by the lack of engagement from the CPC network in creating these principles, which introduce new legal theories and misguided interpretations of EU consumer law that will create confusion and disruption for European customers." Sidebar. Oh no, we're going to be disrupted by sort of annoying predatory stuff going away. What an awful disruption.
Stuff you do, you know.
It will also present a challenge to the industry's future growth and could even deprive millions of consumers access to their favorite games. Now
that's not what? No. They're playing. I'm sorry. I'm gonna be that guy. This multi-million-dollar company, whatever the case might be, they're playing. Oh no, we're gonna lose money, and then we can't make games. Off. Like, are you joking with me right now? No, 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 no. You're not gonna lose money. You're gonna lose everything that you were doing wrong. And if you do right, that means you're gonna still make money. You're gonna make money either way. They make more than enough money. Like, I'm sorry. I know there's a cost to upholding games, like the servers, and the developers, the creators, the creative teams, a lot. Running a company is expensive, but sorry, don't do what you've been doing for so long because it's evil.
last bit is the interesting thing. So, understandably, right, these groups, representing the most powerful players in the industry, did quite like things the way that they were. Change is dangerous, especially to the bottom line, and especially change like this. But in a way, they're not inherently wrong. It is true that audiences do actually understand premium currencies by and large right now, and when implementing currencies, these companies were following, their best legal guidance, and now that guidance has changed. I guess just like how so many phones had like a bespoke charging cable until the rules just changed in the middle of the game. So now they've got to get used to these new rules. And what'll sting is the impact on their bottom line. They're not wrong about the potential impacts of all of this. Now, big companies like Ubisoft can probably absorb the costs of any legal challenges or...
No, because Ubisoft is really struggling. But I get what he's saying. Like, EA is a good example.
damage from rebuilding their premium currency systems. They'll probably spend a whole lot to try and figure out ways around these principles. As for smaller companies, well, they may not find that so easy. But where things will be dramatic is the group's final warning, because it's the most threatening one. It's the idea that players in the EU may just be locked out of video games. They'd say with a game like Overwatch, right? That they would simply choose to geo-restrict access to the game rather than change their monetization model or to just continue the game as normal and risk EU lawsuits. It could just be they look at the EU and think, you know what, we make enough from the States and other countries, we really don't need them. That being said, the EU population is kind of huge. Overall GDP is obviously a very flawed metric, but as an example, right, just Googling this here in 2024, the EU's nominal GDP was about 17.9 trillion and 1/6 of global nominal GDP, which is quite a lot of money, and a hell of a lot of that GDP globally will be in other countries like, say, China, where a lot of these companies will not be able to go in and directly monetize. That could actually mean that they will feel the need to change. And in a way, there are two wolves inside me who are fighting, right? I suppose one of them
Yeah.
is the pragmatic wolf. The other one is the almost like the last vestiges of some sort of libertarian idealism that says, let the market decide. If the gamers do not like the bad practices, the gamers shall not partake in them, and the market will solve the problem. And I wish that was
No.
true, but I feel there's almost a faux idealism in so much of that because these
Yes.
psychological hooks, these psychological triggers, they do actually work. We're in a world where you can very easily make, I think, some sound enough, philosophical arguments very much against regulation and all of that. And I totally get that.
Mm,
I'm fairly sympathetic towards that in many cases. But the thing is, we've
no,
also
not
got to be
anymore.
pragmatic. And a part of that is being a bit humble about the human condition. And the fact of the matter is,
Yes.
these practices are not popular. People do not like them.
No.
Yet, people's behavior does continue. And these obviously are bad. And as people who enjoy video games, we see that as these types of practices derive more and more revenue, they then become what the companies focus on. And that is worse for the
Money
actual
talks,
video
baby. Money
games.
talks.
Because I suppose, in a way, how much of game industry revenue comes essentially from psychological manipulation and these various
Mm,
business strategies
mm,
that are designed to rake in revenue in a way that's not like really tied to the experience of a game that you purchase. We've just
of
seen a share of that
course.
increase and increase and increase. And it's no wonder that as that is increased, the rest of us have become less and less satisfied with games. So, in a
Mm,
way, if
mm,
this
mm.
does hurt the revenue of a bunch of companies and unfortunately leads to a bunch of job losses because these types of practices are no longer viable,
Yeah.
good riddance. Good riddance, absolutely. Let the companies fail, let those jobs go down. How we run things should be a dialogue between the private and public sectors, and in a case like this, I think it's an example of the public
Risky statement, but agree with the thought. Get rid of the bad and move in with the good. I can agree.
sector, right? The people essentially saying, we actually do not like this practice. We don't want
Mm,
this to be the rules of the game. We want the rules of the game to change, to be more robust. And yeah, the market will, once it adapts to that, find a solution.
absolutely.
And if the new rule set is a better rule set, then that should be a net good. But of course, none of this will matter if there's no enforcement. Enforcement, because
I just also want to add with, I know you spoke already about it, but I want to emphasize this part. Um, hmm. The EU implementing this, I stated, will fly over and hit other markets. Absolutely 100% behind that. It will happen. It's totally normal. The only thing that I want to add on to that concept, at least, is the influence on the overall gaming sector is not just going to be talk about financials, but it's also going to be talk about impact it's going to carry through. The EU in a lot of competitive games, Dota, Counter-Strike, Valorant, League of Legends, all of those, the EU, China is kind of like the bigger market in play. I don't mean in the sense of more people play there, because the US has an impact on that as well. But I'm talking about the overall impact of play, the total amount of professionals and the top tier teams. A lot of the time, it's mostly EU based because they're so surrounded by their own best that they tend to always rise. And this is the concept about the EU. The EU has that power. That means that the competitive or the top rankings, that'll have influence as well.
one country making a digital consumer policy often will find difficulty in enforcing it because you're just one little guy. Mr. Belgium, right? That's why, even though Belgium has banned loot boxes, so many games simply just ignore that and still operate in the country. Like in World of Warcraft in the new raid, one of the bosses is basically a slot machine boss. We always have the joke that for the person in our team that's in Belgium, that boss just can't drop any loot. I don't know, there's an EU firewall or a Belgian firewall. That's a joke, but you get the
Yeah.
point. As much as many people have kind of went, oh, Belgium, you take him down, it hasn't really mattered because it's
No.
just Belgium, just one little
Yes.
guy. It's a bit different here, though. And that's because the
Mm.
EU is, 26 other countries, and also Belgium. in 2023, it was worth 25.7 billion euro in game revenues. That's a
Sure.
lot of revenues. And we
Wow.
know that their legislators are willing to take on the likes of Apple and Google when their rulings are being defied. They have done that.
Yes.
But more than that, the companies inside the EU are, part of a big global network, and that does mean that
Mm,
whenever USB-C cables become standardized in the EU, they then become standardized everywhere because of manufacturing
exactly.
limitations. I'm sure Apple
Exactly.
would have loved to have continued just selling people lightning adapters in the States, but ultimately they
Mm,
seem to have saw the way the wind was blowing and made the big change to USB-C.
they had to.
No one wanted to have, of course, a whole factory just making EU only phones. And
Mm,
again, thinking about the impact that would have had on the whole ecosystem of manufacturing partners, blah blah blah.
yes.
So you can see how with hardware it does kind of make sense. We can see those software examples where it's not really the same thing. It's not like you can just go and get
Add
an emulator for your
limitations and
iPhone in America, but
yes.
you can in the EU. So the question then is, will developers want to risk losing a large slice of that EU-derived money? Or will they simply have to ship a cut down and less exploitative version of their in-game monetization to
Yeah.
European countries? If so, it puts them in a fun little dilemma where the American gamer may get a transparently worse deal than, say, the European gamer. And
Hmm.
then you can say, well, compare your store to mine. My one is a bit more respectful, doesn't have as much FOMO, doesn't have as many tricksy bundles and things that basically
Pop-ups.
feel like a scam. And that'll be a bad look. That's the dilemma that these companies face, and in a way, it's all thanks to a game about horses. So, hero of the day, horse girls. I guess that's a thing. Okay, tell you what though,
There you go. Okay. Epic video. Well done. Man, this is awesome. So it's literally good news. I know a lot of people is gonna have a different opinion on that. Belular, I think that's how you pronounce it. News, dude, well done. Absolutely proud of what you just brought to us. Now we know. And most importantly, thanks, guys. Appreciate you guys joining in for this video. My opinion is straightforward. I'm not even going to try and play around with this. This is good, not bad. The EU doing something should influence the rest of the world at some point. I don't think gaming companies are that stupid that they would go and say we're going to limit to certain areas. I mean, Rockstar did a thing similar to that, for instance, in South Africa, because we have strict rules on online gambling. You can't in Rockstar go to the casino and play games. That's legit. You can't. That's why I didn't back in the day make a video about it, even though I wasn't yet a channel on this. Well, Night Panda started existing since 2024. So but point is I had a previous channel, and the facts are the same. These the practices need to stop. The influence of it needs to stop as well. I think people need to start taking a bit more responsibility, as well as this law could just it needs to trickle down. We need to stop this shit. Just no thank you no more. I don't want to hear about kids stealing their parents' credit cards to buy Roblox money. Nah, done with that. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Bye.